from CNN in London. Hello and welcome. I'm Becky Anderson. This hour, guilty and condemned to die. We'll take a closer look at the sensational case of 6 health workers who Libya says deliberately infected hundreds of children with HIV/AIDS. The verdict has triggered celebrations in Libya and widespread condemnation in the West. In a moment, I'll speak with an expert on Libya who says the government will never carry out the death sentence.
And in business news, another day, another record for the Dow. Plus, news of another private equity takeover. I'm Jerry Willis in New York.
And in sport, the Indian athlete who failed a gender test at the Asian Games this month has been stripped of her medal. I'm Candy Reid at the CNN Centre.
And that is CNN in the next 60 minutes. Let's start with Libya, where lawyers for 6 foreign medical workers are preparing an appeal. Now, the 6 continue to proclaim their innocence despite the verdict. The Bush administration and the European Union are taking up their cause. Brigitte Nseku reports.
In a packed Libyan courtroom, the judge delivers the guilty verdict that has condemned 5 Bulgarian nurses and a Palestinian doctor to death a second time. The reaction of the defendants, seated behind protective bars, was hidden from camera. But the courtroom soon descended into chaos. The medical staff have always insisted they did not deliberately infect hundreds of children with HIV in a Libyan hospital in the 1990s. Relatives of dead and dying children are delighted with the result, vindication, as they see it, of the long campaign against the medical team. Bulgaria claims that unhygienic practices at the Benghazi hospital, not the actions of its nurses, were to blame for the HIV infections. And the conduct of both trials has prompted international outrage and fears of a serious miscarriage of justice.
President Barroso and the European Commission condemn this verdict, as, you know, has done the presidency of the EU Council. The European Commission simply cannot accept this verdict.
International observers have complained that the court ignored evidence from eminent scientists that HIV was present at the hospital before the accused medical staff even worked there. And several of the accused claimed Libyan police tortured them to obtain confessions.
There have been serious concerns, serious fair trial concerns in this trial. Most importantly, perhaps, is the fact that even though the defence made time and time again a plea, a demand for evidence by international medical experts to be heard in court, these demands were not allowed.
Last month, 114 Nobel laureates wrote to Colonel Gaddafi calling for a fair trial, and earlier this year a documentary alleged the medical staff were forced to reuse syringes, which could have spread HIV. The defendants' lawyers are now preparing an appeal.
Well, Bulgaria's Foreign Affairs Minister says the children were infected with the virus before the nurses started working at the hospital.
The decision of the Libyan court was very much disappointing because the court didn't take into consideration all the very, very clear evidences about the innocence of the Bulgarian nurses. We are also very much concerned, and Bulgaria is part of the efforts of the international community helping the children that are infected with the AIDS virus. But again, making the linkage between this case and the work of the Bulgarian nurses is absolutely unfounded and unfair.
U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice met with the Bulgarian Foreign Affairs Minister earlier in Washington, and she said while the U.S. government is concerned for the welfare of the kids, the medical workers should be freed.
We understand very much that there are children who have suffered, and we are concerned for their suffering and that of their families. But we also are concerned that these medics will be allowed to go home at the earliest possible date. These are people who deserve to go home, and we are very disappointed at the outcome of this verdict. And I want you to know, Minister, that we will continue to work for their early return to Bulgaria.
Well, the medical workers have been held in Libya for 7 years. This ruling is actually a retrial. The 6 were already sentenced to death once before. Well, they say they've endured harsh conditions in prison. One Bulgarian nurse says beatings and electric shocks left her partially paralyzed and unable to talk. talk for months. Another nurse says she also endured torture and later tried to commit suicide. Well, Libyan prosecutors say they found bags of blood at the home of 47-year-old Cristiana Valcheva, but she proclaims her innocence. The Palestinian doctor convicted in the case says Libyan police fabricated the charges. Well, joining me now from Los Angeles to discuss the case is Libya expert Omar Turbi. Mr. Turbi, will the Libyans, do you believe, carry out the death sentence that was announced today?
Well, it's a very sad day it's a very sad day to see that the verdict was handed down today. The important part about this, and that should be comforting to us, is that I don't believe that the Libyans will ever carry the death penalty against these 5 nurses and the 1 Palestinian doctor, simply because Libya cannot afford politically and its relations with the world around it to carry the case. It has unfortunately become political. It is become a political case outside of Libya. But let's remember one thing is that it is a political case inside Libya as well. The government of Libya.
Okay, all right, let's remember that. There were, of course, celebrations in the streets, weren't there, when the sentence was announced today. You've spoken to some of the parents of these children infected. What are they saying?
Well, the parents of the children do know, even though the death sentence, they do not expect it to be carried out. And, the unfortunate part about this, regardless of how good or bad the legal due process is being carried in Libya, Libya, unfortunately, does not have the precedence of credibility in carrying or conducting cases of this type. So what I hope to see is perhaps really to solve this problem is to compensate the families of the children, take care of them, establish a fund to carry for the kids inside and outside Libya. And I think eventually these nurses will be released. What I hope to do is perhaps promote the idea of maybe the Libyan leadership provide some sort of pardon. But I think if we take care of the families and the children as far as medical care and compensation, and maybe try to work with the Libyan regime, not really push it against the wall to release these nurses. They're not going to be able to release them under the circumstances.
Let's discuss two issues that have come up during this trial. One, that there are suggestions that the Libyan government has been withholding evidence in this trial, and 2, that they are using this case effectively